cussing myself every damn day. There's always some kind of bill to pay. People just doing what the rich man say.
All right, everybody, welcome to Patriot Nightcap. I feel like I've known these ladies for a while now. I've just never had the privilege of having them on my show. So welcome, Leah and Michelle, the resistance chicks.
Thank you for having us on, Teresa. We are so excited to be here.
I know, likewise, thank you. And like I've talked to Shemaine about you. She's like, you gotta meet the resistance chicks. And then of course Courtney is a very good friend of mine. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. Okay, you said something in an interview that I thought was really interesting, and I can't remember who it was, but you said, you know what? If it's not God's law, like, forget it, right? So you guys raise a really high bar, and I actually, really, I do. I respect that, because how many times are we in situations and we're like, well, it's the law, or, well, they've conditioned us to think that, like I was at my daughter's parent-teacher night, and they passed out the forms, and they're like, this is the way it is. And I'm like, wait a minute, why is it that way? Why can't I know this or know that, And so when you say it's not God's law, like give me some examples of what you mean by that, and how you resisted, and tell my audience, how did you go from like the Bible ministry transitioning over to podcasting? Sorry, I'm throwing a lot at you, but I'm curious.
No, that's actually a really good question, and everybody should know John Locke. So if you haven't listened to, he's got a lot of really short, like, they were called treatises. They were papers that they would write. That didn't necessarily write whole books. John Locke wrote the first and second treatise on government, and you need to read John Locke, and then you can understand. And it didn't just start with John Locke. This idea of nature and nature's law actually really came about when Christians got the Word of God in their own language. And as Christians began to read the Word of God, they began to see something disjointed. So wait a minute, God, I'm supposed to follow God. I'm supposed to follow the Holy Spirit. They're reading about the disciples. Should we obey man, or should we obey God? Those are my favorite parts. That's Peter, I think, in Acts chapter 4. And he says, I'm going to leave it up to you to decide whether it's better for me to obey God or to obey man. Yeah. Right. So first and foremost, as Christians, we are citizens of heaven. We are part of the kingdom of God, and we must obey the king and the king's rules and laws first. And everything else must be subject to that. So when you go to the Old Testament, it kind of gets confusing, because some people get stuck in the weeds in Leviticus. So there's God's moral law, the ceremonial law, and the judicial law. So the moral law is a code through all time, and it's revealed to all people. And the ceremonial law was revealed just to God's people, just for God's people. The sacrifices, keeping certain, even the feast days, the ceremonies of the bringing in your tithes and bringing in your doves and your goats and your sheep and your cattle. There's a ceremonial law that's under Judaism, and Jesus came and he fulfilled all of that. That's why he is the last sacrifice, right? So, but the moral law, when you read in Leviticus, God says, I destroyed all of these people because they broke these natural barriers. Don't do that. Do not incest, bad. Okay. Those kind of things. So that there's the natural law that God reveals to mankind. Don't kill, don't murder, don't steal, don't lie. These are universal laws, the laws of nature, and they're timeless. And nature's God, and they are timeless. Yeah. So when you're under a certain government, then anything that goes against the laws of nature, nature's God. Let's say your government tells you to rape someone. Well, that goes against the law of God. I can't do that. No, that's that. I don't care what country I'm in, right? Let's say your government tells you, for instance, that you can't grow food. Well, God actually tells me that I will be blessed by him, and he'll bless me in the fields, and he'll bless the fruit of my womb, and he'll bless my animals. I don't know if you're referring to what we ran up against with the law.
Yeah.
the law, that we actually ran up against regulations
And remember, if
masquerading as law.
and regulations, mandates, restrictions, none of those are actually law. So we've got something lawful is God, and then there's legal, and they should go hand in hand. But if something that is legal does not parallel being lawful,
It becomes tyranny.
it is tyranny. And then that's when resistance to tyranny is obedience to God.
Yes.
Okay, so have you ever run into the law what is legal, and then the consequences for not, obeying what the legality of whatever the situation? Maybe it was with your homesteading, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
what
So
happened?
it's very simple. Every state, and people should know this if you start to grow food,
Yes.
there are tyrannical tyrants around this country that don't want you to be self-sufficient. But each state has its own regulations. Okay. And so there are regulations on usually on animals, on what you can butcher and what you can raise. And usually there's zoning regulations for what animals that you can raise. Then there are state by state what animals you can butcher and then sell. And there's a really good resource called Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. And they have state by state broken down. Let's say you want to get raw milk, which is just real milk. Okay. Well, in Ohio here, you can buy into what's called a herd share. It's a joke. It's
meaning you own a portion of the cow. Let's say there's 40 families and we all own a part of the cow, and then we can get the raw milk because we own a share of it.
You sign a little contract, you pay them $50 and you own part of the cow. So then you get a share of the cow, and it's called a herd share. That's the way they went around that. And several states, I don't know how many, have herd shares. There's only a handful of states that allow the sale of raw milk. In Ohio, you can raise up to 10,000 chickens and you can butcher and sell them from your farm. You can do that. In Kentucky, there's actually Big Chicken. Okay.
So it's like Big Pharma.
You would think that
big poultry.
Moving to Kentucky, I had some friends move to Kentucky thinking that they're going to do a Joel Salatin type chicken tractor where you kind of you raise out meat birds on your own farm and you sell them.
And the chickens get fresh grass every day.
I had a friend who bought 100 some odd acres in Kentucky thinking he was going to do this. And then come to find out he forgot to research Kentucky's laws on butchering chickens, which are harsher than other states.
Because
most other states.
Big Chicken and Big Poultry does the same thing as Big Pharma. They send lobbyists to Washington to protect.
They send lobbyists to Kentucky.
They send, to the state legislatures.
Yeah.
And they send them there to help bring in regulations that bolster the big guy and then push out the little.
So what does that mean? When it comes to butchering beef, mostly beef has to be butchered in the United States at a USDA facility. And most of your listeners will say, "Oh, that sounds reasonable." No, it's completely unreasonable, because you know what? If I raised a water buffalo, I don't need somebody there, USDA.
And a water buffalo is just like a cow. Okay.
So and a regular buffalo. So big beef, big cattle has a corner on the market. And I'm telling you, when a USDA facility costs a lot of money, you have to have a regulator there on there. You have to pay them to be there.
And whenever the government gets in between my plate and my fork and my mouth, we have a problem. And so what we ran into here on our property is we started to raise our own pigs, our own chickens. And we had one neighbor that had a problem with it and started to complain and complain. Now we actually fall within the law. Okay. We know we fall underneath God's law, but we were legally allowed to do what we do because we fall under something called Ohio 51921. That's
so each state has like a state revised code.
And in our revised code, we are able to, in a township, do anything agriculturally that we want to, and no one can tell us what to do as long as we don't live in a platted subdivision, which is what we all understand as big subdivisions. If you live in a big subdivision, they cannot zone you out from doing anything agriculturally. So we fell within that, and we had our township telling us that we did not, and we put the burden of proof on them. And then we did this. We went crazy Christian on them. When they kept coming at us, we finally, one day they showed up and my mom went so crazy Christian. She's talking about the founding fathers.
That was actually the county.
Well, that was several. We've had several. We had the county, we had the township, we had several different agencies coming at us, right? And what we did is we pushed back with just, this is our right. We are within the laws of God. And you literally, when we went crazy Christian, they just took their clipboard and they started backing up. They were like, ma'am, I'm just going to write that everything is fine here.
And I want to back up actually to give people the tools that they would need. Because that's kind of like an overview of, you can go at them, but how did we literally go at them?
Okay, so really what I like to do here is give like very simple links on how to do this. Because I'll be honest with you, like so born and raised in El Paso, moved to New York for 25 years. I'm a city girl, right? I even ordered like toilet paper sometimes to get delivered. Like, this is how bad I was in New York City, because everything is hand to mouth. And you can probably imagine some of the poisons that I've consumed. I mean, really terrible. Then I found this company. I've gone toxic free. I'm very happy. It's all good. I'm in Arizona, but I can't tell you that I would know the laws or where to go. Even if I wanted to plant, I wouldn't think anybody would have a problem with me planting a garden, but like bringing in cattle, no. So I order from the beef aisle over here. I'm very happy with that. I know he covers all aspects of it, but like for someone who's just coming in and saying, okay, where would I begin? Go take it away. Cause I wouldn't know where to begin. Like if I wanted to bring chickens in here, I don't
That's a good one. That's a good one.
So do you live in a subdivision?
So I live in, in a just a average street.
Do you have an HOA?
Yes.
Okay. So
that's probably a problem right there.
HOAs are an absolute nightmare.
They're the worst.
Growing food, just growing vegetables. They've kind of funneled everybody into an HOA because of running water, running electricity, running sewage, right? It's incredibly expensive to do any sort of single builds now. And HOAs are one of those things where you sign a contract and you make a deal to go and and work and live with them. So there are ways around being in an HOA, and a lot of HOAs have their own regulations that you basically kind of signed on to. So if I buy a house in a township, I haven't signed on to anybody's regulations. I just bought the house. Right. But when you make a deal, you're signing on to that HOA. Nobody reads them. Right. And all these rules and regulations, because they're a bunch of Karens. Right. Even there's a lot of conservative Karens out there. I despise them. I despise people who say, I'm glad to be in HOA because I don't want somebody's grass to grow 10 feet next to me. And I'm like, well, don't call yourself a Republican. Do not call yourself a conservative. And certainly if you call yourself a libertarian, God will strike you with lightning. Because you have to recognize that there's no controlling other people in there. The laws of nature, nature's God. Okay. So
well, I will tell you, I think I have the loosest HOA. Like they don't knock on my door. It's nothing like that. But I mean, I do appreciate the fact that I'm like, okay, we bring our trash out at a certain time. It's like, okay, I respect that. That's fine. I'm busy working. I've got stuff to do, but and they've never knocked on my door and told me that I couldn't do something. But then I started thinking about it. I'm like, all right, so what if I did want to bring some chickens back here? I'm sure the neighbor would complain. You had some flexibility and leeway because you don't have an HOA, but I'm sure I would probably get penalized, right? I'm sure.
We tell people to do it first and then ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah.
And that's what we kind of did in our neck of the woods. So when it came to chickens in the 80s, somebody came by and said, we don't want, some city folks moved in. This was a rural area where my mom was growing up. We own my grandma's house now, and it was pretty rural. And people had cows and chickens all around. Now there's houses. Now there's houses everywhere. Goats. And so somebody made it so that in this particular township, you couldn't have chickens. Well, we wanted chickens, and we kept going up, and we talked to Lou up there at our township, and we said, hey, Lou, when are we going to get chickens? And he's like, we went back a couple times.
He kept saying, I'm working on it.
And then he said, you know what, just get your chickens. Other people around here had chickens. So we got our chickens, and that really wasn't the problem. And we finally, there's a whole big movement to change zoning regulations to get chickens. And there is a way to do that. I can help you do that. You get your little chicken lobby together, and you go to the township, and you give them all the benefits,
your city or whatever.
You give them all the benefits of keeping chickens. They're not loud. They don't poop nearly as
the
much.
Decibel of a rooster is less than a dog bark.
Yes.
Oh. Wow.
It is
Okay.
actually.
And
It
I have
really
the
is.
loudest little dogs running around. So there you
They're
go.
very loud and yippy and yappy.
Yeah.
And chicken fertilizer doesn't need to be scooped. It can go right into the ground. And obviously they produce eggs. So chickens are great. So you can change your zoning laws and we did here in this township finally.
And with loose HOAs, we have found a lot of times, like here in our township, we have some HOAs that once the chicken law got passed, so you could have your 6 hens or whatever.
Yeah.
Then people in HOAs started to get chickens. Now certain HOAs cracked down and said, no, our HOA trumps the township law. And then other HOAs, they don't care. I would say this to HOAs. It depends on how far you want to go in the battle. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
But an
Like with
HOA,
everything. Yeah.
here's the deal. If you marry your husband and you sign a contract that says he is allowed to beat you, if he beats you, is he going to be able to hold up that document and say, but she signed this contract that says I'm allowed to beat her? Or is he going to go to jail because he beat you? Well, he's going to go to jail because you can't sign a contract that makes somebody do, or that indentures yourself into something that is unconstitutional. So that's what I say. It depends on how far you want to take
yet.
It depends on how far you want to take the fight in your HOA. I would just recommend people move. Because it's not really a battle that you want to have to fight. If you did, though, you could win it. Because of the example that I just gave.
So when the township, when our neighbor, we found out that we were under this exemption that we could have in Ohio, particularly if you have 5 acres or more, you're exempt from zoning regulations for building and for keeping animals.
No matter whether you live in a township or a city or anything.
Yeah. So, but we have less than 5 acres. So we're in an exemption that's just for townships. So we got our pigs. And that was when our neighbors started to complain all the time. And then they started to complain about everything. Like
we left gas cans
we had
out.
a list like a mile long when the township zoning Karen came by. He's a dude. What do you call him?
This pile of wood needs to be cleaned up. It was like a bunch of like stupid stuff. And like this house has been in my family since 1965.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it was just a bunch of nitpicking, stupid stuff. So that was when we wrote them, and there is a religious, it's the Rupula, and it's a federal law, and it is
Religious Land Use Protection Act.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
LUPA.
So what we did is we wrote to the township and we said, beyond the ability of us having this exemption of 51921 in the Ohio Revised Code, this is our religion. We actually have a cross. We have a chicken church. It's a chicken chapel. We serve God.
Our chicken coop is literally built in the shape of a chapel and has a cross on the top.
Yeah, it's so cute.
It's really cute.
And we serve God by raising our own animals. This is part of our religion. And we went at it full, that's when we went full up crazy Christian. So then our neighbors brought the county, and the county came by, and you need to know, they do not have a right without a warrant to enter into your property and take pictures. Now you can decide whether you want to take the easy way or the hard way. And the county came by and said, hey, can I come and take some pictures? And I knew that in my county that we have a county fair, and there's people who raise pigs and chickens all over the county. There's no law in the county against keeping pigs or chickens or any animals.
And we told
we said no. We politely said no. And then on another return for another complaint, that was when they were looking at a just kind of a water discharge from our basement, and our neighbor had said that it was a sewage line, and it was just
that we were dumping sewage out. It was a grandfathered basement drain.
It's just a basement drain. When your basement overflows, you have a drain in the floor and it goes outside.
Okay.
And so this particular basement drain, he was looking at the basement drain going out, and I was like, it's been here since the house was built. What do you want us to do? And that was when my mom came out, and she's like, they've been coming at us for however many months, and we are serving God, and we have a right. We have natural rights, and we want to grow our own food. And that was when the county gentleman said, you know what, ma'am, I am in total agreement with you. I raise my own food too. I understand. And we're just going to mark this as nothing is wrong. And that was when he walked away. And so yeah, you have to know, number one, your rights before God. And I would tell people, even in the fights that you might have with your zoning, you have to know, number one, before God, you have a right to grow your own food, raise your own food, and sell that food.
Mhm.
One of our
That's called living, and it's been called living since the beginning of mankind.
and you need to know it, regardless of any regulations or laws or whatever. We can try to get it so that the law lines up with what, or the legality of things line up with God's law.
Mhm.
But you have to know God's law. I have a friend in Nicaragua, and I'd ask him, I said, hey, Corey, are there any regulations on selling food or selling animals or whatever? He goes, no, you can raise a goat, butcher the goat, cook the meat, and sell it on the corner.
Mhm.
And I said, are people dropping like flies? No, you need to know that the USDA, the CDC, the FDA, they are not there to help you. I don't care how many people you think are dying of salmonella. They are not there to help you. You are an adult.
So let's talk about this for a second, because I see there are so many brands out there and they hide behind brands and they're really not safe and they're poisoning us and it's toxic. Like I just saw a meme this morning, or a little video about workers, this is crazy, signing NDAs, but they've seen the ingredients to like the HelloFresh meat.
Yeah.
Is actually lab grown meat. Like some of those meals that people are getting, and that the workers are signing NDAs to not discuss what's in the meat. You think it's HelloFresh and you're getting Hello
lab
grown, whatever. So we're really heading into, obviously we're in very like Twilight Zone dangerous times. Now, I went to pick up some mac and cheese for my daughter. I won't go there anymore, but Panera, this is like months ago. You know how they want you to have the digital chip now to palm at the Panera, like a food chain. I mean, here it is, folks, right? So I went there not knowing this, and then I said, okay, forget it. I'm never going back there. But I went for mac and cheese. I got a chicken salad. I looked at the chicken and I'm like, this isn't real chicken. I don't know what this is. It was like little balls of purple. I don't know what it was. I tossed it, never again. Then I heard about the palm thing, but so it's very obviously people are going to need to know how to grow their own stuff.
Yeah.
Because this is in, little Gilbert, Arizona. I'm surrounded by farmlands,
Right.
I'm surrounded by farmlands, but the chains and the stores and the
It's the chains and the stores. It really is. So, we just played a clip on our show. We do a world news show on Sunday. And we were actually just covering Nigel Farage, who was made a campaign to keep cash. Well, they have a lot of pubs, and we have some friends who are British, and these little pubs are they're not bars. They're places where people come to commune. Yes, they sell alcohol, but they're home cooked meals.
From scratch.
So tell them about the guy.
Yeah, he literally was like, he offered a discount. I think it was like 50 pence or cents on any pint that you buy or whatever.
That if you use cash.
Now he sells a lot of food though. There was no discount on the food, but the idea was getting people used to spending the cash. And he said, what I really want to do is when the fishmonger comes and sells me the fish, or when the beef guy comes and sells me the beef, or the chicken guy comes and sells me the chicken, I want to be able to then pay him in cash. Right.
And pay him that day.
And to pay him that day. And it's kind of a very foreign concept to anyone in America to think that a beef guy or a chicken guy
or the potato
guy is going to be dropping off these fresh ingredients at a restaurant, because most of our restaurants get their foods from GFS or from some sort of giant food wholesale.
It has to go through a warehouse.
All of your bacon is frozen when it's cooked and frozen. And so that's what people are used to here in America. But to think in the UK, they actually eat real food
on every little corner. We had a friend who said that if you hang out the pub, somebody might just bring in a handful of chickens that they just butcher that day and sell them to you at the pub.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm from El Paso, and I can tell you that it is kind of cool, because you'll have the lady come by with her tacos or burritos or caldo.
Really?
Oh yeah. And you pay like in and out of like the salons and stuff. It's kind of
awesome.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I love that. I miss that.
Is it legal?
I mean, I feel
doing it.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff that goes on in El Paso, but I don't know if it's illegal. I mean,
because I don't think it is. And I love that she's doing that, because, here in Ohio, if you want to sell eggs, you have to sell them washed, and you have to not have a dog living inside your house. I'm not even kidding you. If you want to sell them not from your farm. So if somebody comes to your house and grabs the eggs, they can grab them. But if you go to a farmer's market, or if you take them to somebody else, they come and they check your water.
If you live on a well.
And then they, if you live on a well, and they check to make sure that you understand temperature, so that that you have a thermometer, so that you know how to keep
everything is hyper regulated. And here's the deal. These are our taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, right.
At work.
To sell some eggs.
Right.
And here's the thing. In the
nailed
UK,
it though with the hyper regulation. Like that's what everything is now. You're watched, everything is it's
in Europe. And I know in the UK, you're not allowed to sell washed eggs, because what happens is eggs come out with a protective coating on them. And as soon as they get wet and they get washed, they look prettier, but then you have to refrigerate them. We raise chickens. I will have eggs just sitting on my counter for a month. They're fine. You can eat them. You can eat them like 4 weeks later, unwashed eggs. As soon as you wash them, then you actually open up the egg to contamination, which is why they have to regulate it so much. And this overregulation causes the salmonella. It causes sickness, and it's a shame that we live in there's so much litigation. People are so ready to sue you. Yes. Whereas, I think about this all the time. Can you sue somebody legitimately for sleeping with them and getting a sexually transmitted disease? Because I don't think you can. Like maybe for HIV, but I don't think for like regular herpes or something.
Like if they did it knowingly, like if they like.
But how do you prove it?
How do you prove it? Like here's the thing: I've never heard of anybody getting
how them recorded.
Right. I've never heard of it.
Anyway, I don't know.
I've never heard of it. Nobody has ever said anybody. But here's the thing: if I want to make a transaction with a farmer and buy their raw milk, the whole world goes crazy if somebody gets salmonella or bacteria, or get sick from it. Well, no, you need to go to that farm. You need to know your farmer. You need to see their practices
and talk to other people who buy their products.
And then if you're going to consume something like you would, these are adult transactions, and the FDA has no God-given authority to come. If the government isn't going to come between consenting adults, swapping sexually transmitted diseases all the time, every day, millions of people, which is a strain on the taxpayers, by the way, because how many people are hitting the downtown University of Cincinnati just for some penicillin for their gonorrhea or whatever. And the taxpayers are paying for that. We have to recognize that the government is not there to protect you from life. It's called life. Okay.
Yeah,
the government is there to protect you from criminal behavior.
And they're not even doing that.
And they're not even doing that.
And they're not doing that. I left New York. I'm like, this is nuts. They've lost their minds. I'm like, what is happening right now? There's just people everywhere, and there's no consequences to anything.
But technically, if you have somebody selling like hot food, I don't think there's any state that legally allows you to sell food that you've cooked in your home, and then you just go and sell it somewhere. And that's wrong. You absolutely should be able to do that. And I would back and support anybody who does that. And I would definitely be quiet on anybody who does do that, because they're doing their God-given.
Yes. And right. I would also just maintain that, listen, everyone has a brain. If you want to buy something or listen to something, you should be able to do that as an adult, and you'll have the discernment of what you choose. Do you want to listen? If you don't want to listen to something like this show, you are not held hostage. Go ahead, go change the channel. Okay. Yeah. And all the fluff tube nonsense, and how many times I've gotten strikes for what, I don't even know. It's like ridiculous. But it's like, if you should be able to read something, say something, decide for yourself if you want to buy something, I would think. I don't understand.
What I think about a lot is the abortion industry, and not just industry, but people who are super pro-abortion. they get really upset when we say that we would like to put restrictions on these abortion clinics. We ultimately want to shut them down. And they say, well, you are trying to stop a woman's access to healthcare or stop a woman's access to an abortion. And how dare you stop a woman's access to abortion? And yet those exact same people will stop my access to raw milk, to fresh cuts of beef, to fresh eggs, to fresh chickens. It's a double standard. It's the same thing when they would say my body, my choice. And yet here they want to be able to force all the juice in our arms. What happened to my body, my choice?
100%. I agree with that 1,000%. And I've talked about that before. I'm like, oh, when it's convenient.
Yeah.
My body, my choice. Really?
Exactly.
I'm sorry. We could think for ourselves, and we should have medical freedom and the freedom to choose what we want to consume, you know, but
it would be different. I think that the great, if you wanted to compare the two, because we know that when we're talking about abortion, we're not talking about a tumor growing on your arm. Okay. We're talking about somebody with another set of eyes, another nose, another heart. We're talking about a separate human being. So if the farmer were coming up and jabbing me with salmonella, that would be illegal. Okay. That is your comparison. Okay. To abortion, because that would be him doing something to my body against my choice. Right. That is, but here's the thing. I am making a choice and I'm making a transaction. When it comes to the abortion industry, we're talking about another human being. And guess what? We need to ask them, would you like to die today? and you need to get consent. And we do know that you probably need to have, in Canada, you know, they're actually trying to give kids consent to euthanize themselves. Canada is going crazy. I don't know if you heard about it with euthanasia. They just want to you know what? Could you just all just die? You know, if you call in, if you got mental issues, if you got any sort of issues, they will direct you to their euthanasia clinic.
That is just crazy.
You know? I know.
Just nuts.
I know. They're big on it.
I'm so worried about our kids. If that's one thing that I will give this platform over to in a heartbeat, are the kids. I'm worried about it. I'm worried about our kids with the drag queens and the libraries. I'm worried about the kids that, you know, just don't have a voice, and the sex trafficking and the open borders and I don't know. It's like where do you think biblically, where are we? Where in the Bible are we right now? Revelations, like where are we?
So Leah and I take a very different eschatological, I hate that word, stance. Eschatology. Thank you. Our eschatology is very different than other people. We call it, of the increase of his government and peace, there shall be no end. And so we do a series on our show called Revelation Red Pill. We just did our 26th episode last night, and we take people through the history of when Revelation and Matthew 24 were fulfilled the first time. And that happened in AD 70. Now, if people want to believe it's going to happen again, that's fine. But not knowing our history of what happened in AD 70 and the greatest apologetic and proof that Jesus is that he's who he said he was, that no stone will be left upon another.
I don't think literally everybody's going to know. You're jumping
no
up
stone. Well, she's asking where I think we are on the timeline. Yes, I would say this on the timeline of first, we have to know our history. Not knowing what happened in AD 70 and the first time that Matthew 24.
I don't think people know. You're
going to tell her.
I'm going to tell her. Assuming that the audience knows.
Tell you. I'm going to tell you. Tell us. So not knowing what I am about to tell you is the equivalent of being an American and not knowing about the Revolutionary War. Mm-hmm. Okay. What happened when Jesus in Matthew 24, which is the chapter that everybody uses that says that these are going to be the end times. This is Jesus prophesying the end of everything, right? That happens in Matthew 24. So when we look at Matthew 24 and he prophesies the destruction of the temple, and in Matthew,
not one stone will be left upon another.
And in Matthew 23, he tells the Pharisees and the Sadducees that all the blood of all the prophets of everything is going to come on what? That generation. He said, this generation, it's coming on you. Within 40 years, I kid you not, the destruction of the temple. How many of the Jews died? Over 1 million of the Jews died.
About 1 million Jews died.
Their bodies were piled up in the river. Blood was flowing everywhere. It was the most atrocious. It was more catastrophic and disgusting than any movie has ever depicted anything ever. Okay. It's literally recorded in the Josephus is the greatest historian, Christians, non-Christians, seculars, everybody looks at the works of Josephus as the authority of history at that time. And he recorded what happened in his, the Wars of the Jews. And it's absolutely
So
phenomenal.
what happened was, after Jesus died, between AD 30 and AD 70, there was a fervor, they still had this messianic fervor, even though Jesus had come and died. Many of the Jews were not believing in Jesus, and they still believed in the restoration of Jerusalem. They were tired of being under Rome's thumb. And so there were these zealots. Actually, Simon was a zealot, and these were warrior Jews, and they were going to overthrow the Roman authority in their capital, in Jerusalem. And they plotted to do this. And in AD 64 to 60 to 70, there was something called the Jewish Revolt. And the Jews said, I'm done. We're done. And there was many kind of skirmishes that led up to this, different things with the Romans had slaughtered 3,000 Jewish people. So there was a reason to want to throw off this Roman authority. But you have this kind of internal battle happening where the Jewish religious leaders are having to deal with the Christians. They despise these Christians. They're kicking them out of the synagogues. They're persecuting them.
They're tormenting them. They're torturing them.
And Rome decides, you guys are fighting too much. Jews, just get out of Rome. And the Jews are actually expelled. And two of the Apostle Paul was working with, Aquila and Priscilla. They were expelled from Rome. And this expulsion happens, and there's all this unrest happening around the world. And so you can actually take Matthew 24 and you can see, and we've done this on our show, we break it down. You can see how there were wars and rumors of wars. There were over in the far reaches of Rome, there were many different revolts happening, and you would hear of these wars and these rumors.
And they were followed
happening
by one of the greatest times of peace. Like, it was completely peaceful until all of a sudden wars, like literal peace, and then wars. And so all of the Jews of the time fled to Jerusalem. It's what they did. They held themselves up. Like, literally everybody went there. Now, I don't know if you remember what Jesus said: when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, flee to the hills.
Luke chapter.
The
21. Christians
of the time remembered those words when they saw Jerusalem surrounded by armies, and they actually fled to a place called Pella.
And that was recorded by Eusebius.
And not a single Christian died amongst those million people that we can find any record of, because all the Christians listened and they obeyed, and
they remembered what the apostles had told them.
And so we look and we see that the Jews that died, like a million of them, literally, in the greatest slaughter, all of the sacrifices in the temple ceased. The temple is completely destroyed. It's never been rebuilt again. Okay. And at the time, Nero, he was known as the beast. Literally, John's writing about this man, and he's literally, everyone knows he's called the beast. It's like when we say the jab, everybody knows what that means. And his name literally spells out in Greek, in Hebrew, 666. The number of a man, 666, Neron Kaiser, the beast. He would literally dip people in oil, and he would light them on fire, Christians, to persecute them for Roman candles, for sport. He was literally a madman.
He cut his pregnant wife open. He had his mother murdered, assassinated. He was a sexual fiend. He would bring in
demon.
He was a demon. Yes, he actually had a young boy brought in who looked like his wife that he had killed, and had him castrated and made him dress like his old wife.
Oh my God.
So he was a sick beast. And even after he died, there were rumors that he was still alive because he was so crazy.
So we take people through, and I know this is a lot to jump in and put in like a little 15-minute segment, but we take people through in our Revelation Red Pill Wednesdays. Hey guys, when we go through the book, Jesus said that all the laws and the prophets were fulfilled in him. So what does that mean? That means that all of the law and the prophets were fulfilled in Jesus. So there's no Old Testament scriptures that we can use for the end times. We only have New Testament ones. And then in Matthew 24, that was fulfilled in AD 70. The Bible doesn't tell us it's going to be fulfilled again. Maybe it will be. I don't personally think so. So we are at the level of the increase of his government and peace. There shall be no end. So we take more of a, you know what? Jesus comes back for a pure and spotless bride, a victorious church. we've got work to do. So we're not sitting here going, wow, look at how bad everything's getting. It must mean that Jesus is about to come and rapture us away. We're looking at how bad everything is going and going, wow, the church really sat on their hands on this. And we call it modern end times theory, because mostly what everybody believes about the modern end times is only 150 years old.
The
Prior to that,
the rapture is actually a new theology. It was kind of brought into being around the 1850s with John Darby. And this idea that the world has to get worse and worse before Jesus comes back is pretty much a new phenomenon that's about 100 years old. And it was really solidified in the Scofield Reference Bible in the early 1900s. And what happened was Christians were losing the culture battle, and some new theology came out. There's a lot of new theology that came out in the 1850s, the Mormonisms, the Seventh-day Adventists, and then Darwinism comes about. And it's all this kind of new everybody's kind of looking for something new. Up until then, understand that the Pilgrims and the Founding Fathers believed that they were fulfilling the New Jerusalem was then, that they were building the kingdom of God, that they were spreading the kingdom of God. If they didn't believe that, the missionary movement of the 17 and 1800s would have never happened. They would have just sat there waiting for Jesus to come back. Now, I know that a lot of people still go and missionize people waiting for Jesus to come back. But the idea of, and we have viewers who will say, don't try to make the world better. You'll stop Jesus from coming back. And you see what's happened over the past 100 years. Okay. You see the eugenics movement, Margaret Sanger. We just did a whole show last night on Alfred Kinsey.
the sexologist.
The sexologist. I mean, that's ending sex trafficking is huge, and we have to do that. But how do we end sex trafficking? Well, we have to go back where the sexology was foisted upon a society by do you know about Alfred Kinsey?
Yes.
So Alfred Kinsey in Table 34, where he actually had child molesters write down the orgasms that babies were having and children were having.
God, yes, right.
Yeah, and then they used that.
Kids,
yeah, so they used that. They used that. He had a book called the Sexuality of the Human Male in 1948, and then the Sexuality of the Human Female in 1953. And our schools use that. I think by the time of 2003, 650 Kinsey was cited 650 times in changing laws to lessen the punishments for rape, lessen the punishment.
Said that according to his research, pedophiles never offended twice,
and that children could benefit from adult child sexual relationships.
Right. No, I know all about Alfred Kinsey, and I mean, he's right up there with Nero. Like, what a sick.
Exactly. He is. And that is, but that is in our schools. You want to know why? I mean, Hugh Hefner was a virgin in college, and then he read The Sexuality of the Human Male, and he was like, he went berserko. And then he started to fund the Kinsey Institute. And so all these teachers and all this sex education, Barack Obama pushing sex education of 5-year-olds. Why? Because they believe, these teachers are convinced that babies and children are sexual. And so we have to just kind of guide their sexual. That's why they're showing 6-year-olds how to put condoms on a banana. Okay. Because you're a sexual being. Right. And you want to stop this. We have to go back to Alfred Kinsey. We have to undo these laws. I mean, before Alfred Kinsey, in 3 states, rape was mandatory,
death penalty.
In 22 states, rape was
optional, death penalty.
Yeah. And so Alfred Kinsey comes and says, they probably shouldn't offend, all these different things that people are doing sexually. That's everybody kind of does it. And so they would cite and say, well, how can we control the morality of people when everybody's so immoral? Well, Alfred Kinsey, to get his research on who was doing all these crazy things, actually had, I think, he only had one fifth of the people that he interviewed were normal, any sort of normal people. Everybody else were convicts. And I think he, out of 5,000, he had 1,000 homosexuals in the early 1940s. He used the criminal.
So meaning it wasn't a science base. So Teresa, I know that you know this. I think Leah's giving it a refresher for your audience, but the point is that there was a lot of stuff that came into play that shifted society in the past 100 to 150 years. And modern end times theory is one of those things. So now,
most Christians want to say, and I hear it every day.
Yeah,
they say it's getting so bad. I just need Jesus to come back. And I say to you, It's getting so bad because you aren't doing anything about it.
Right.
Because we
right.
aren't doing anything about it because
Well,
we could stop it.
that's right. So that's like for our audience, and it's kind of like, okay, so what can you do? Well, I get, I'll tell you what, join your school board, number one.
Yeah.
If you
Right.
have kids in public school, like you have to get active and you have to know what is going on.
Even if you don't have
and
kids,
talk to your kids, like really.
even if you don't have kids, if you do have kids, homeschool your kids. Still join the school board. Maybe you're in your 70s. Still join your school board.
Well, there you go. Really good point. Yeah.
Right? Like there,
or
it's my
support
property
the people.
taxes.
If you're not going to do anything, support the people who are doing something. It's
Right.
kind of like, okay, because there's a lot of people out there who do podcasts, who provide links, and so if you're just at home and you can't, whatever, you can support the people who are doing something. Yeah.
And let's not underestimate the power of your voice. Just talking to people and telling people and speaking out and not being silent and not being ashamed of what you now know to be true. We keep saying never again because they're threatening to lock down and mask us up again and you know what? I'm going to speak so loud about it this time. I'm not going to be, and we spoke out about it pretty loud the first time, right? But I'm vowing this time I will be the squeakiest wheel. Yeah. I will be the thorn in their side. They will wish that they never came at us. And so let's not negate the power of our voice. When Jesus,
power of your voice. Yeah.
Jesus was there in the beginning. The word tells us this. He was the word. When he spoke, all of creation came into being in that instant. And life continues to exist every single day because of that word. Well, our words hold power.
Let's give you some encouragement. So we do a world news show, and maybe you guys have heard about the farmers in the Netherlands. And how the government and the Dutch government has wanted to clamp down on nitrogen use and shut down all these farms, like 3,000 family farms. Some of these are 6 or 7 generation farms. And so what did they do? They did 2 or 3 different things. Number one, they actually created a political party. It's called like the FFF, like this is a farmers party. They prayed. There is a huge, awesome, there are a bunch of people who believe like we do that we're not, and the world's not ending and we have to make it better.
Their eschatology is crazy like ours.
Just like us.
We get that. We know that it's crazy.
And so they're just like us, and they've been praying, and they're like, no, this eschatology that we're talking about leads to, we take over the government. Christians run the government. I mean, this is the eschatology of our founding fathers, who believe that you should always prefer Christians. That George Washington said, a nation can only be blessed if we are following God. Right. Mm-hmm. So we've got to get our nation under God, one nation under God, and then God can bless our nation. And so then we would, increase if we followed God. So in the Netherlands, they prayed, they created their own party, and they raised their voice. They had all their tractors and they had all of these things. And it was like they shook not just the earth. They shook heaven and earth. And a couple of weeks ago, we did a show. The entire Dutch government has collapsed, and the prime minister has resigned, and the farming party is soaring in the polls. They're winning. They're taking over. They are winning. Wow. And this is the answer. This is what you do. You fight, just like you guys are doing in Indiana. You guys are fighting Arizona. I meant Arizona. Just like you guys are doing in Arizona. You're fighting on all fronts. You're getting people involved in the local politics. You're fighting for you're obviously Kari Lake is your governor.
Yes.
So you have a lot of shenanigans happening. You don't let it go.
Right.
You just keep going at it.
Right. No, for sure. I'm all about prayer and the grassroots movement, and people have to really step up and do something and walk the walk, and also I want to emphasize what you said earlier about the power of no. When someone wanted to come in and take pictures or something and you told them no, seriously, Child Protective Services, if someone calls them on you or they're pissed at you or whatever's going on, you don't let that person in the door.
Right.
Don't take the piece of paper from them. You say, back off. You're not allowed to come in. You need a court order. Get out of my house or get off my lawn. Get off my lawn. Whatever.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like we've been conditioned to think like, oh, we got to listen to authority, and okay, that must mean, and you're right, getting louder and using your voice. Like you said, you're going to be the squeaky wheel. Yeah. I know I'm sure a lot of people feel like guilty about that, but I think also a lot of people felt stunned, like, okay, what's going on? And let's be honest, if you've been raised and like vaccinated your whole life, and then did you guys watch 1883 by chance? Like,
it's funny. We watched the first 4 or 5 episodes. I don't know why we didn't end up finishing it.
It's a little bit brutal.
It was a little bit brutal, but
Pretty
so
brutal.
we are familiar with it enough for whatever point you're about to make.
I mean, well, because nobody wanted to get those diseases and die in 2 days.
Right.
I mean, let's
Exactly.
keep it fun. So
Exactly.
it's like, who wants the smallpox or whatever, and you're dead in 3 days, and then you're outcast and banished, But this whole I can't even say this because I won't be able to put it on Fluff too. But you got to do your own research. It's obvious. And is this another ploy to throw off an election? Did you guys watch the debates last night or at all?
So I've seen clips. I did not watch the whole thing. I've just seen a couple clips that have shown up in my feed. So I didn't watch the whole thing. Did you watch it?
I did. It was pretty interesting, but yeah, I don't know. I don't. What do you think of Mike Pence? Just let me just throw that out there. What are your thoughts on Mike Pence?
It reminds me of. I just think you're either demon possessed, alien possessed, or you're reptilian. Like something is wrong with you.
Mike Pence, right?
I'm honestly shocked.
He scared
he's
me
in this race. Like
what kind of
I don't know.
what
they
is he? Like
he
knows we all don't like
and
him.
he knows that he's gonna lose.
Yeah. So what's the game?
What
what's
is
the play?
I'm very curious as to why he's in this race. There's got to be something that they feel like is going to be advantageous.
Well, he's a Jesuit, and they're trained to infiltrate. And he traded Trump's cabinet, and he was honestly his aides were there particularly to take Trump out.
Mm-hmm.
And so Trump, literally Mike Pence is a lying, he is a lying
snake.
Pile of manure.
Yeah.
And he is a snake. And I apologize to my viewers. I was like, I did not.
We supported him in the beginning. I didn't catch it in the beginning. I honestly,
he is good.
I didn't catch it until the election of 2020. Like I knew within days, the way that he was acting, I was like, wait a minute, something's not right. And then literally from the date that we all voted until
oh my gosh,
the fateful day with the coin.
I apologize to my viewers because I usually feel like I can catch things pretty.
Oh man, he gives me creeps, and boy does he use the Bible, as an.
But when you look, oh my gosh, he's a pretending pro-life guy. He pretends to be all moral and whatever. He's doing some sort of Messianic. He reminds me. I don't know if the Jesuits have the same kind of like high level ritual, but he's got to be some sort of trained by something, CIA or something, because he knows how to push the buttons. Mm-hmm. He knows how to say the things. But
have you noticed how angry he is now?
Now he is. He's trying to be smiling.
He cannot keep that anger in.
But
check.
I think that obviously he was the head of the coronavirus task force. So if there's anything that I blame Trump for a lot. I really do. But he trusted Mike Pence, and Mike Pence played him like a fiddle. Mike Pompeo played him like a fiddle. Mike Pompeo was trying to run for president too. Like all of these guys. Well, Mike Pompeo is CIA. Like if you have somebody who says I'm ex-CIA, they can never be your friend. Right. Like you can only keep them at arm's distance because you'll never be my friend. I will never. You can't be friends. That's just your thing. You will never have any friends.
But also do what Teresa's doing. Pull out from the harmful chemicals. Pull out from the harmful foods, make the switch, go to farmers markets, meet your farmers, all that stuff. So support what she's doing, because that is one of the ways that we can stand up to the system, right? Because they want to kill us.
Pull it away from the big box stores and their 1,000 lawsuits a day, and poison control calls. Let's take it away from them. That's what we're about. It's like take it away 100%. From corporate criminals. Try the non-toxic stuff. And we've got the beef. He covers every aspect. So it's like, I love it. If you can't, plant a garden, then at least get your beef and know, okay, I'm not getting poisoned today.
Exactly.
I'm doing it today. God bless you guys. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. And I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Teresa. We've had a blast.
Thank you.
People just doing what the rich man say. I want to go home.